Thank you for this film. Maybe you can start with how all of this began and how did you develop it?
There's a journalist called Karishma Mehrotra. She writes for the Indian Express. She had written an article called "The Human Touch." So I went through that article, and then there was an open call by Story Culture. By the way, this is Sarabhi. She was one of the producers on the film. So Story Culture had put out an open call to make short films about overlaps of tech and society. And in that, I pitched, and it was an open call for everybody. So there were about 300 odd applications, and from which 2 were greenlit. One was my film, and one was another film called Tracker, Tak. The thing is that when you take an article as like a point to start, it's always just a starting point. It's never the be all and end all of it. So the process really began after that. I was trying to understand what data labeling really is, not in terms of the physicality of it, but what underlines data labeling really. So gradually I started to realize that the women tagging photos and videos, or anybody tagging photos and videos, the process is very much similar to parenting. Because as children are growing up, parents teach them how to recognize objects, colors, differentiate between colors, then enforce their morality on children. So when you look at it like that, where AI assumes the role of a child and the data labeler assumes the role of a parent, it opens it up to a much larger discussion. The discussion then becomes, for me, it became about, is the child really a clean slate? As they say that, children when they're born, within 5 years, you teach them something and they learn, and that's what transpires throughout their life. Or are, as a lot of psychotherapists have said, that children are born with almost 300 patterns of their ancestors, which can come up in different stages of life, in whatever situation they're put in. So when you apply that to AI, is AI really a clean slate? Is it really a blank slate, or is it, does it have the biases of its ancestors? Which is where the idea of AI bias really comes in. And I don't know how many of you know about AI bias, but AI bias is a technical term where human bias seems to come into AI bias, AI's understanding. For example, Amazon had a recruitment drive, which they automated their hiring, and in that the algorithm began to only take men, because what was happening was that the data it was being trained on was primarily 10 years of it was 95% men, for example. So that bias eventually landed up, and this will have much larger repercussions if it's put in things like policing, governance, things like that. Also representation, what the film really tries to touch upon. So, yeah.
How did that kind of research turn into this, it's also a relationship movie between this daughter and mother. When did that come into the picture?
I think it happened parallelly. I was researching in Jharkhand. I researched almost for a year on and off. Okay. And what happened was that while pitching itself, I had the mother-daughter story. See, there is Emir Kustrika is a filmmaker, right? He talks about if you have to approach a community that you don't know. He's made Time of the Gypsies. He's made a film on Roma Gypsies, so he's not from that community. So he says that if you have to approach a community that you don't know and understand fully, you have to align your emotional logic with the emotional logic of the. So to do that, I introduced the story of a mother and a daughter, and introduced some parts that I knew emotionally, that I knew that I could, talk about emotionally. I also really love, for example, Denis Villeneuve and Interstellar, where they use a string of emotional storytelling, but they hang everything that they geek out on. You know, they hang black holes, they hang quasars, they hang all sorts of things. So that really became, it happened parallelly. I would talk to a lot of Adivasi women, and simultaneously I would come back and write. And for example, one Adivasi woman that I spoke to, Philomena, she's the wife of Bulu Imam, who's a Adivasi art conservationist. He's actually preserved villages of Sorai, which is the local art form, and preserved, or he's discovered almost 70 rock art sites, Neolithic rock art sites. So when I was speaking to her, she said that a child born in an Adivasi society will understand the jungle's rhythm, where the roots are, where certain animals stay, which season is correct for what, by the age of 12. My hypothesis was, I asked her, can a child come after 12 and still uh, be able to get attuned to the ways of the jungle? Which is where like the ancestral patterns and what runs in your blood and all of that kind of came in. And which is why the porcupine angle also comes in.
I mean, considering, all of this research, was it ever considered to be like a documentary or something, or did you always see it as like a fiction project? It feels like, especially the first half of the film, has so many traits of what a documentary is in terms of what it has and what it's saying.
No, I mean, I do come from documentary, so I love that medium. But and I think it's a strength of mine to go into research and then go into documentary. But no, because with fiction you can say so much, and you can, like the CAPTCHA test, for example. CAPTCHA test is not necessarily that actually happens, but CAPTCHA is actually labeling. We've been doing data labeling, all humanity has been doing data labeling for decades. Only now do we know about data labelers doing this work. So I put it in the film. It's fictionalizing it, but it's putting it in the context of what everybody has kind of gone through. So I didn't, and also like these kind of narrative arcs, and and them coming together. Maybe I don't feel like that may be as effective as a documentary. It would just become about the data labeling process, which I didn't want to make the film about.
I mean, we see this whole new different world in the first half, and we're seeing it pretty objectively. We're seeing it through her eyes, right? And in the second half of the film, you have, the one who runs that company and Nehma sort of making broader statements like AI is good, AI can be taught to be good. But we do live in this sort of capitalist society where any sort of something like this eventually turns into a cheap labor project. When you make broader statements like that, do you feel like, do you feel like, is there any trap of, simplifying it? Is that you say making that statement, or do you feel like it's just coming out of the character's mouth? How do you separate yourself from
No,
that?
you can't separate it. I own it fully, but that doesn't mean that I'm not cautious. This is a sweet-ish film, right? But I am deeply concerned about AI being used in policing, because that is going to lead to profiling, and eventually we are going to get into ambushes of areas based on instructions from. I'm actually writing a second part to this, which is on that, which is on AI and governance. But it's going to be a much darker story. Those are the things that really affect me, because right now we are seeing war, and we are seeing automation, and we're seeing the use of AI, and it's not a pretty sight. So that said, I do own it up. It's a product of almost 2.5 years of this thing. Also, it's born of a CSR project. So you also have to see where, as an impact film, where it began and what one had to kind of check and balance in
Can
the
you talk a
story.
bit more about that? This feels like a very unconventional way of producing a feature film.
Yeah.
How did that happen? How did the CSR money come in? And
So the CSR money came from a group called Omidyar. Story Culture had tried for many years and months to get them on board to put their CSR budgets not in booklets, pamphlets, yada yada. They would, instead of that, put it in films which could be impact related films. And impact films is not a, it's a newish term in India, but it's impact films have been going on in the US for a long time. There's a lot of documentaries that outdo a lot of theatrical releases just because of the way they're screened and where, the kind of impact that they have. So this was supposed to be an impact film, and it started out as a short film. But very early on, I realized that this material needed much longer length. So the short film grant, I put in some money from my own side, and I brought it together and made it a feature.
Someone who watched this film in the festival sent a question on our group. I'll just read it out. It's a question on language. Can you comment on the language that is used in the film? While the Orao/Kuruks, they speak a language that might sound like it, but the language often used in the film sounds very close to Bhojpuri or Magahi. I don't know if that's right. Was that intentional or accidental? Or has the language of the Orao become corrupted to the extent that you no longer
No, it's not
notice it?
Bhojpuri.
Okay.
In Jharkhand, there are tribes speak different languages. Oraon tribe speaks a language called Kuruk, which the chapter names are in that language. But the thing is that I am working with an actor who's non-Adivasi, it's two things. One is a character-driven answer to this, and the other is a production-related answer. And also, the last part to your question is very true. There's no real corruption, but even an Oraon will speak a generic language called Nagpuri, which is very similar to Bhojpuri, but it's not Bhojpuri. Nagpuri, why? Because it's Chota Nagpur Plateau, and people understand it across the tribal belt, even if they belong to different. So that was one way of navigating it. The other was that I was dealing with an actor, and the younger girl also, who are not from the community. Nor the girl is from Jharkhand, but Sonal is not from Jharkhand. She's from Maharashtra. So the kind of budget that you have, you end up spending a lot less time. You can't spend a lot of time with respect to getting the language right, because I don't know it. Simultaneously, I had, at every step of the way, I had filmmaker friends, Biju Topo and Cyril Murmu. But even they suggested me that you should not get into the trap of getting that right. You need to get. I would sometimes fear whether am I getting the representation right. So, but very gradually I realized that you can't approach filmmaking with fear at all, right? Why you can't do that? Because the moment you start doing that, you miss out on the larger, broader strokes. I had to get the Adivasi philosophy right, which we did, because at every step of the way, scripting, edit, final this thing, I would bounce it off with Bijuda. And Biju Topo is, by the way, an ethnographic national awardee, and they handheld us into that culture. So yeah, second answer was that production really is, you don't have that much money, so you can't spend that much time in with the entire crew in Jharkhand. I spent a considerable time. The last answer really is a character driven. This girl, she was with a non-Adivasi forward caste father. And the power in that household would be tilted towards the father's family, clearly, because Nehma left and she says that savages, etc., etc. So a girl who's grown up there comes back home, comes back to the mother's year. So she will obviously converse with the mother in the larger language instead of the Oraon language. And the other thing is that Nehma is only conversing with with her manager, who's also a Bengali lady. So she has to get a common language. The one place where we could have done it was with the friend, but again, time and money.
We'll leave it to the audience. Any questions? Anyone?
This thing of bias is very interesting. I mean, this entire thing of beautiful woman means blonde and blue eyes, right? But when you show beautiful tribal women, they all look like upper caste. Okay. So the point is that I like casting Nandita Das because she's got a dark skin. You cast her as the Dalit, okay. No, she's not, I mean, obviously upper caste, but the question is you have got certain biases. So the point is, even when you make a movie about bias, you end up showing upper caste faces as Dalit in some way. So I don't, and casting, for example, you're casting, okay. Obviously, none of them are, from the names at least, I got the feeling that none of those characters who are playing these Adivasis are actually Adivasis, right?
No, they
So,
are.
They are? They are?
Apart from Nehma,
The heroine is Adivasi?
no, she's not Adivasi.
Okay.
But her friend is Adivasi. The young girl who plays Malti.
What about the daughter?
Daughter, the character is supposed to be half Adivasi, half non-Adivasi.
Yeah, okay. So, okay. So that is something. But the point is that it seems to be that when you're dealing with all cinema, it looks like, like when you're dealing with a certain class, that class is not available to filmmakers to represent themselves, right? So the question is, you're always using some other shortcuts. So the representation is always biased in some way or the other. It's very difficult to get over that. But probably, would you say, for example, having an upper caste woman playing an Adivasi is also a bias of some sort comparable to, passed off as a beautiful woman, has to be played by an upper caste, is also a bias comparable to blonde woman being beautiful? It would be.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Yes. I'll tell you what. Our first goal was to cast an Adivasi woman. The subset of Adivasi actors in Bombay who speak Hindi is so small. 2 women. I found 2 women who either the face is correct, they're not good performers. As a director, you can only pick a performer who's a correct performer, even if the face is a little here and there. That said, Sonal Madhushankar is a Dalit woman herself. She's not an Adivasi, but she's a Dalit woman. She comes from a background of understanding she's written extensively about, she's experienced when she was an IT professional, she would experience, silent casteism herself. And sir, I was very cautious about these things. Very, very cautious, because you can't go into a film like this and not know that, what skin color of your actor will mean. All of those things are very imperative. That said, the last image that comes out of Adivasi woman, Nehma, beautiful Adivasi woman, why it is slightly fair-skinned is because the bias hasn't entirely left. It's still there. Because the data subset that AI has been fed is small, na? She's using her daughter's photos, so which is why it stays. So I think this is one part that I vehemently defend, because I did do the due diligence.
You couldn't use non-actors, local in some way. After all, cinema has got this ability. Actors don't need to know what they're playing actually. That's a great thing. Unlike theatre, they don't need to know what they're playing. In fact, a lot of Fellini and all these guys, the actors wouldn't know what is the role they were playing. It would be put together in some way. Right? And the non-actors, it may have been possible. I'm just saying it's a technical
problem. It could have
for a
been, sir. We tried. But everything boils down to money. Everything boils down to money, in the sense, how much time do you have? Money is proportional to the time that you can spend looking, casting, making the film, in general. I spent 2 years of this. I didn't take a single penny. I put in some of my money. So that constraint, all of that constraint dictates a little bit of an industrial way of working, because time is restricted because of resources. But totally, I might do that, because now again the second part, who do I cast? Kani Kusruti, But I want to cast a really strong-headed person. And the thing is, when I would travel in Jonha, I would drive a lot there. I would find these really strong faces. I would really find very strong faces. Like the girl, the younger Nehma, is from the region. Her face, you can see, is so evocative, right? That's not her real voice. When she started taking those dialogues, poor girl, she could not. Her references are so different, na? She's watching Bhojpuri, not Bhojpuri, Nagpuri cinema. So her references are very different. But every day I would travel, I would find Nehma 1, Nehma 2, Nehma 3, but I couldn't cast any of them.
I really liked how you made a comparison with the porcupine, the animal, and you showed cave painting, how the ancestors labeled the cave with a particular art, and then the next scene, and they go on to do data labeling for AI. So I like those kind of small connections really well. I had one doubt. The Dunki marriage is
Duku marriage.
that marriage is part of Jharkhand's culture, right? And is there now in the modern day Jharkhand, do people don't like it because the other character, the tribal woman, she is saying like, do not speak to her. She's from Duki. Do you also want to go? So is there a hate towards that in the modern
There
day?
is some boycott, which is why like Nehma has a house which is a little away, separate from the village. There is a certain kind of boycott. The thing is that I'll just quickly explain what Duku means. Duku is a marriage, is a live-in setup where either an Adivasi or a non-Adivasi, because of not getting social sanction, they end up staying together. Sometimes even Special Marriage Act doesn't play out in real situations, so they end up just staying together, which is looked down upon because it's still not sacrosanct marriage-wise, right? The other situation is when two Adivasis get together, but they don't have the money for a wedding. This used to happen a lot earlier. So they would just end up staying together. But even in a so-called rather progressive society like the Adivasi society, it's progressive from the aspect of sexuality, from how women have far more rights than in caste societies. Even in that society, there is this kind of a bias against a woman who lives together. And I mean, there are multiple. Actually, this will lead to a very interesting conversation. Some. I don't know if this question will come up, but I have had in my previous short film I made about songs for Baba Sahib was about arts for Ambedkar, art politics on Ambedkar. What people would ask me, are you romanticizing a society in the process of, because you've come from outside? And I did see a lot of problems there. I saw witch hunting. I didn't see it, but I heard about it. I heard about the fact that women are villainized as witches, etc. They're burnt. All of that is there. Those superstitious, extremely superstitious society, dogmatic in that respect. But when you approach a subject as an outsider, I think it's a very tricky line to do. So it's better to just, if you go and critique, if you go and critique as an outsider, you've only spent a year. In your criticism will also not be absolutely bang on. And so it's better to look at the aspects that appeal to you, like the relationship with nature, like preservation, like Adivasi knowledge, Thank you.
This conversation about being an outsider and making a film there, it's coming up more often these days. And I think a few days ago when Rhythm of the Mum was shown at the festival, it also came up. Like, you as a filmmaker, what do you feel? Like, do you feel like the box is getting smaller for you, or do you not care about what kind of films you make? Do you see any restrictions?
No, as long as you approach it with empathy, I don't think it's a box is not getting smaller. But that said, I would also like to say that the first right over these stories is with the people who come from the community. But that doesn't mean that the people start dictating who makes a piece of art and who doesn't. That's a slippery slope. That's what censor folks are doing. That's what the government is doing. You do this, you don't do this. That can't exist in a society. So no, at least I try to approach it with utmost sincerity. in the film also I felt like certain scenes were about fictionalizing the ethnographic part, which is a tricky slope. I think you should not fictionalize too much the ethnographic bit. If you can get it broadly right, it always serves you well.
You used inclusivity, like the bringing of the daughter along with the mother, and basically the mother now understanding what inclusion of their culture, their tradition would actually mean AI to a broader world.
Okay.
I am of the bias that I am of the opinion, that look, this whole thing of biases, right? And you have instances of where people saying that no, they are of a bad tribe. Lower tribe. There are instances of that in the movie. I feel that this is AI is just a tool. These biases are already I feel it's part of our evolution if you think about it. I don't feel that the thing about what we are seeing right now, ramifications of AI, these are just coming from our usage of the digital world, right? We can just say that.
Absolutely.
But these things of biases, like let's say we are talking about in this movie we saw about tribals. At the same time, we are living in a world where we are actually judging people on their phones, swipe left, swipe right. How it goes.
Yeah.
So discrimination is something which we already have as a species.
Yeah.
So what is your thoughts and opinion?
I think I agree. I don't disagree with that because, but I don't. These are tools, but when tools are put to larger use to all of humanity, it can have devastating repercussions. So AI bias, the way we understand AI bias may not directly be, I think you're trying to hint towards that these are human constructs and we already have that, but AI is like a tool, and the word bias used for AI is obviously a technical one, but when you apply it to human lives, which it is going to be more and more, it's going to have larger ramifications, which is why the whole idea, and also this is why humans in the loop, right? Humans will not be out of the loop.
I had a very similar question, the Dukki marriage. Like, is there any ritual that happens in that marriage, or it's just people living together?
They come together in this
and live, that's all.
Yeah.
Okay. Because I mean, when I saw the film, I went back and I'm somebody who's very interested in understanding and knowing the subaltern cultures. So I couldn't find anything. So I just wanted to ask. And another thing, regarding like what you asked, like we are already biased, and that's the the second order effect of AI being biased. The problem is, you go and talk to a general public, right? They do not think AI is biased. So the reason like why the film impacted me so much was just before I watched the movie. I mean, a week before. So there was this one post about Hampi Temple in 14th century or something, right? So and I saw this very interesting thing that AI gave. Somebody had posted it on Twitter. It had generated an image with only Brahmin men in the temple.
Where?
It was posted on Twitter.
Tool? Which tool is
it was
that?
AI image.
Which tool?
I think Gemini or something. I don't know. Somebody had posted it on Twitter that they generated it. This is how Hampi would have looked in 14th century.
Yeah.
And it was very interesting that how it generated only Brahmin men in the temple. So, and this bias is coming because it exists with us and we are not doing enough to counter it.
See, we are not doing enough to counter it. That is also debatable because what we don't understand is something as simple as data labeling, is one step. The technology that we have progressing, it builds on that and starts building something that what we say as, modern tools like ChatGPT or something which we can, let's say, okay, please generate me a podcast tomorrow, generate me a entire movie script tomorrow and things like that. So when we have a potential of going that is where, things, I felt it gets more darker and darker if you look at it. So, these things are already within us.
No, but like, for example, this Brahmin debate or A.K. Ramanujan has spoken about little cultures and larger cultures, right? Right now, we are at a time where, which is why we want the government of India to see this film. If we don't digitize our little cultures and larger cultures, we are going to lag behind 10 years, and then we are going to have a AI which is primarily from a gaze, which is like Oriental gaze. Because it's even if we think about it, what are the images that would have gone into for AI to produce that humpy?
That's
what are the
history
images?
and the basis of resource like that it is collecting is from a certain collection or a certain books which all have these inherent gaze. Like, we grow up in this misogynistic society, casteist society.
Yeah.
So even AI inherits all those things. So
Yeah.
I mean there should be, I think, some 100 years of the opposite view that needs to be fed. Only then it can, we can say, okay, somewhere from the right it has come to the center.
Yeah, and there's a certain amount of self-determinism that I also try to speak, because we say a lot of times in the Q&A, I've had questions, do you feel like AI and Adivasi and technology, these should be mixed together? I'm like, they have to decide for themselves. We can't decide. Why I'm saying this is that when British came here and when they started, when the earliest sociologist or the earliest anthropologist to document India were British officials. They would do census, they would do all sorts of things. They came from their own understanding of the country. So that self-determinism needs to happen from each of us, and we are structured in a way that it can happen. There's a state which is primarily indigenous. There's a state which is primarily minority. There's a state which is, so all of those data points digitized by the governments of the respected can be put together, and they can be fed into machine learning systems for them to be, rectified.
A few observations and maybe a question somewhere in there. I feel the resolution of the story, at least with regards to the AI, right? It's sort of idealistic. I mean, I think you yourself said it's a feel-good-ish. I feel good, of course, when it comes to the relationship. But even with regards to the AI, you show how these two individuals, they sort of intervene and, right the wrong, at least in that immediate, world of things, right? But again, that is very idealistic. But in the larger scheme of things, they are just two individuals. The framework under which AI itself operates itself is, it's problematic. It's extremely capitalistic. I think you yourself showed in the movie how the company, probably American or Western, they would rather kill all the pests rather than identify the pests that are actually, pests, because it's cheaper, right? The larger problem here is that aspect. How much money can you save with AI, right? I mean, unless that framework changes, I don't know what change, like a few individuals in India, could do. It doesn't matter whether there is government support, because let's face it, it's a very neoliberal country, and it doesn't matter if there are a few idealistic people in office. When the larger structure, the framework under which operates is it's really not in the interest of capital for you, for somebody to come in and they say that AI should not be biased, because capital doesn't really care if it is biased or not, as long as the money is made. So I want to know if you, if that is a conscious, way of telling the story for you as a director. Would you agree with me if you say that this is idealistic and that, while it makes sense for the story, it probably is not as realistic as it should be?
No.
Okay.
To a part, I would agree to you. But I wouldn't use the word idealistic. It's my politics.
Right.
So my politics comes into the film like any other. So for you, it might be idealistic. For me, it's not. It's a hopeful indication of.
No, I'm with you on that. Just please don't say that. I absolutely love that it is hopeful. Right? I want it to be hopeful too.
Like arguing. I'm saying that I don't particularly. I won't use the word idealistic. Okay. But I will definitely use the word that you use a term which is closer to See, I also keep thinking about the darkest aspects of AI. I keep thinking about the fact that, for example, is somebody asked me in one of the screenings, do you think that Adivasi world and AI are actually congruent? Are they really congruent if you think about it? So I was like, okay, what do you mean? What do you mean by that? So they were like the minerals that are being used, cobalt and silicon, are being mined from areas of Adivasis, and how can that be congruent? And that makes perfect sense, right? It absolutely makes sense. So I don't think there is a perfect answer. I keep thinking about. So I won't use the word idealistic. It is a political choice as a filmmaker that I do. But that said, there are things that I'm very, very cautious about, especially governance in AI. Because as we have seen, a machine gun came into war and it did what it did. A nuclear arsenal came into war and it did what it did. Now with governance, it's going to lead to whatever it will. And secondly, the larger question of किसी को पड़ी ही नहीं है ना. Nobody really cares for things to be correct. So in that, it's only about making a quick buck, etc., etc. Sure, for another film. I agree. I don't disagree. I really feel that but in that, what really for me character moment wise is important is that we all fight small political battles every day. We take certain decisions every day which are deeply political, which we don't even realize. Is that fight not? Does it not merit enough appreciation, or is only like going full throttle against the systems which are problematic? Is that the only way one can approach it? So that is like another thing that I have to say. But I don't disagree with you. I feel that these structures are deeply... Dude, film festivals, man. What are we talking about? Like, film festivals are deeply imperialistic. Yeah. We're sitting in Bangalore, we work in these tech companies where our heads are bowed down to. Why can't we create our own setups?
Not that we don't want to.
Yeah, actually. And like, for example, IFFE, I keep thinking about Indian Film Festival of India. That could have been the most prestigious event ever. That could have been the Cannes of the East if we had our shit together, if the bureaucrats did not intervene in selection. So it's deeply imperialistic and we have not got our act together enough to get it going.
I think in your movie also, right? I mean, the protagonist, right? Now she's so strong in her views that she wants to, she wants to put a stop to it. So she takes the effort to do it. I don't think everybody can do that, even if they wanted to, because people have so many, they have mouths to feed or whatever it is, right? They might want to change it, but they really cannot because their hands are tied at the end of the day, right? So
it's also a personality thing, as you said. No? I live in Bombay. 30 years people live in Bombay, they still can't afford a house.
Let's just call it spirit of Bombay and then...
Yeah.
That's what it is, right?
Yeah. If somebody can't afford a house after 30 years living in a city, it's bullshit, right? But there are people who really file petitions, who have done their bit. But not everybody does, and that's okay, right? That's what
Hope is good.
Hope is necessary. Like art is necessary.
Yeah, AI and art is another entirely different argument there.
Yeah.
Hi, thanks. I had kind of a similar question. You said that this movie was partly funded by like a CSR sort of like initiative and partly self-funded. And of course, like CSR initiatives often have like developmentalist goals. Do you feel like the fact that you were beholden to a CSR initiative in part maybe tempered or modulated some of the political sort of like will that you had in making the movie? Yeah.
There was a certain kind of they didn't say particularly, but I will be very honest, they did not tell me remove this, remove that. Neither did story culture. They gave me all this thing, but we knew from the get-go that we can't make an overtly political film. There's a lot more politics in the everyday, I feel. And so I don't particularly think that it has hampered or modulated. From the get-go, we knew what kind of project we were getting into, so you treat it like that. Now, if I get if I get funding from a place where I can do this, just think about it, okay? If I made a film on Netflix about AI and Naxalite, which I am working on right now, will they even let me put it out? What does that need? I need foreign producers for that film, right? So it is always a result of where the money is coming from, and why should we not say it out loud? Just say it. In that, at least we can pull a film together. The biggest fight is to get the money in this climate to make a film. That's the biggest victory. You know, this is the longest Q&A I've had.
Are you directly saying we should stop it?
No. I'm enjoying it.
First of all, congratulations on your award.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, I really love the movie. And I like the way that you've shown a very complex way into village life. Because I think nowadays people tend to like romanticize the idea of living in a village, you know, just disconnecting from the world, where they're like actually trying to get a network. They're trying so hard to even find some network there. And even the boycotting of certain communities, that's still prevalent. And, you know, the leaps that educational system also has to make, you know, when we see the schools infrastructure and, you know, the teachers there
it's
and
hard.
everything. Yeah, it's very
not
hard.
that easy
And, you know, it's really kudos to you for showing those complexities also. My question was, when the daughter asked the mother, she was like, you never did this before. Why are you doing all of this now? Is it because, I mean, my point of view was just, after the divorce, she hated the husband. So she sort of like hated the cosmopolitanness of, you know, the husband. So she wanted to like go back to her roots and show what she was, you know, imbibe a little bit of her identity to her daughter, because she thinks that the daughter brings a lot of the father's identity. So, I mean, what do you think that was?
When a person is made to feel lesser than they are, they tend to go away from their completeness. And the journey back is towards completeness, which is indicated to... So when Nehma was young, she had a relationship and a friendship with the porcupine. Which indicates that she had a deep connection with nature and she was whole as a human being. As life happened to her, she went into a house which called her savage, jungli, sharabi, etc., etc. She became incomplete. She went away from each other. So she went away from herself. What happens when you go away from yourself? You actually are not able to take care of the people who are around you, you know. So she perhaps became an absent mother. You know, she would not have done enough as much as the girl wanted to do. And that's indicated in the 1 year that she literally left. Overtly indicated, I'm telling you backstory, but overtly indicated, she left. A mother leaving in that society for a year, something really would have gone down. And she's a strong-headed woman. Things would have affected her, right? As the course of the film, completes, it goes from completeness or wholeness to incompleteness till the mother sees her daughter with the porcupine in that shot. For me, that shot is where she's whole again. She discovers that completeness that she had as a child, but through her child, which happens with a lot of kind of parents. No?
So like reclaiming her power, you know, the words that were used against her, she's just taking it and...
I mean, I guess just words.
So she was from the jungle and all of that, you know, the words that were used against her, possibly by her other family, you know, she's probably like...
No, you're right. The effect that words have, for me, it's more to do with not so much with the words, but as much as the effect of the words that has happened on her. The effect has been that she would zone out, she would, like, all of this is backstory I'm telling you. There was also a little bit of an anxiety stuff that I'd put, her hand shaking, etc., but we couldn't do it properly. And like at the end, when the girl holds her mother's hand, her hand is supposed to be shaking a little bit. So that was something that we were doing. But in that image, when she sees the daughter with the porcupine, all of the effect just goes away. At least for that moment. Words don't go away, past doesn't go away, but its effect that it has on a human being, that goes away.
Yeah, and wonderful bird formation shots. They were absolutely stunning.
Thank you.
Thank you for screening your film.
Thank you.
I guess my question is, did you observe when you were shooting or when you were editing instances of like labor exploitation, given that these are global north industries extracting labor from Adivasi women? You know, we've heard of people having to identify really terrible things as a part of their data labeling, image labeling jobs. And
Yeah.
so did you observe that?
Content moderation.
Yeah, and slash, like, did women talk to you about these things? Was there any attempt at organizing, like labor union related stuff, like labor union?
Sure. So I'll tell you honestly, the conversations that I had were fairly optimistic. Why? Because we know, like, for example, Mary L. Gray, she's written about data labeling being a ghost work, it being unrecognized labor. But that's when we see it from the outside, especially for these women. It was 15,000 rupees inside an office space was far more empowering than working in a field where you would make 200 rupees a day, which is also unrecognized labor in this kind of feudal society that we live in. So for my conversations with them were mostly, and I got a lot of agency stuff. Like, for example, the pest scene comes from a conversation with a girl. She told me about data label, AI agriculture module, and in that how she told her manager that, this season this plant doesn't grow, so this is incorrect, and the manager let her label that, for example. So I did not encounter, maybe also because it's rather new, but it is, the more and more it spreads, the more, for example, BPO spread, it's a direct parallel to that. I'm sure it's going to lead to questions of larger organizing and, the kind of money that is given. It's obviously, why is it in Adivasi areas, if you think about it? Why? It's because the labor is cheap. The job is not very tricky. It's images. So images are easily, can be done by a lot less education. So that's my honest answer, because I will not say that there was a desire to agitate, or it wasn't. But I do think that it will come to that, especially content moderation. Content moderation is tricky. So for people who don't know, content moderation is about getting. Facebook and Instagram has those community guidelines, right? Like those videos which are extremely violent, etc. So a human being goes through all of those videos and tags them unsafe for community. That's content moderation. So that's also a part of my next film. Don't take the idea, please.
Apparently, the suicide rates of such people are quite high. People who do content.
It's crazy. Yeah.
So thank you, BFF, for screening such a wonderful work, and congratulations. Aranya, right? Yeah, thanks to him. And Aranya, right?
Aranya.
Yeah. So congratulations for your BIFF award and best wishes for the next endeavor. So the question is, you did a nice work with the child actors actually. So what is the process? Did you guide them in the process, or did you create such situation so that they will do their own, like they'll be like this, and you'll capture the frames first, And the second part is about the AI, when you're talking about in the current classical technology we are having right now. So either 0 or 1, or is a particular state or a second state, right? Now, when you are talking about bias, beautiful, the words itself.
Yeah.
As a human being, we have thousands of years of practices, cognitive skills developed, consciousness. And if you put maybe 3 different concepts of us in front of us, say like maybe a right or left or central, we evaluate on our own way. 7 billion people in the world, they have their own understanding and definitions of these particular words,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But when you put in the AI, as you spell it correctly, that the data that we are giving to the AI to feed, so it transforms in that way AI itself, because it doesn't know these cognitive skills or consciousness, right? So how do you make them use of that particular words into AI, that it's we are calling it AI bias, AI beautiful, and all sorts of things? Thank you.
Okay, so child actors, I think the most difficult thing in my film was to work with children. It's really difficult. The porcupine was easy. He's very easy, cute chap. We just go wherever we asked it to go. But the kids were difficult, not because they were difficult to work with. They had references which were very different kind of cinema. So they would take dialogues like and like even the scene with the mother, she's confronting the mother. You can see I've had to dub it. You can see the sync is also off in one dialogue, but that's because the girl is she went full Doraemon mode, yeah. Full Doraemon mode. Like, तुमने मुझे रखा नहीं साथ में. What do I do with that? So you go into ADR, you go into dubs. But that said, all of them have very sensitive faces. In my experience working, I've worked with another film, I've worked with child actors. If you don't give them a lot of dialogue, and if you don't give them a lot of gyan, they do very well. So a lot of the videos in of them playing together, that was not in the script, like the final where she's like, हम तुम्हारा video बना रहे हैं, या they're playing with the dogs, etc. These two girls would make each other's videos all the time, and they would like Snapchat filters, they would have like full on Snapchat. So while making it, I was like, okay, let me see this, like how is it? And so then there was a video where she's she's shying away from the camera. There's a video where the girl is playing with the dog, etc. So I tried to use as much as of who they are, which was almost for all 4 characters it was correct. But for Dhaanu it was very difficult because Dhaanu was really needed to emote. So I would say that gradually time and removing dialogues from her scenes, she actually submitted. She's a 13, 14-year-old girl. By the end of it, and this is the power of like, visual storytelling, she started looking like a 12-year-old girl. She started looking meek, slightly, slightly dumb that she's going to a jungle with a Google Maps thing. Her body became very much like that. So, and there was utmost surrender from these kids. They really trusted me. But they just could not get it right quickly because their references were not correct. About the second question, I forgot, sorry. What, could you repeat it? I'll get it in one line. Just tell me what it was.
Yeah, about that AI biases, or when we're tapping bias and beautiful, this
Acha, how can
it
get figured out? I think technically that and you guys are, a lot of you are in tech, so you answer this better than I will. But the diversification of training data is the absolute one step. The amount of time that is spent on fixing these issues is another. And the volume of data is a third thing. So I think that's pretty much it. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Thank you for this very timely and wonderful film. And I just wanted to add a quick observation and slash question. So, I wanted to add up on what he said about the biases in your film is not one-dimensional. There are multi-dimensional biases going around. It's not just humans having biases against humans. There's also this notion of humans having biases against nature, right? The way we denote something as pest, it is a certain way of looking at the world which may not be holistic.
Yeah.
Because the nature itself is not something that we fully understand yet, and the way we like denote something as pest for our commercial capitalist gains could end up being something that like is of much value to us,
Yeah.
which is something that I think a lot of indigenous people have realized.
Yeah.
And that demarcation or the binary way of seeing the world is, I think, amplified by AI. It's something that we internalize as technological thinking or technological determinism, which ends up like limiting the way that we define the world. So that is also like a possible way to solidify our species, right? So I think that's a very interesting. I like the fact that you end it on a positive note, but not on an entirely positive note. There's like angles to it which are a little bit problematic. Even though the lead character gets happy when she sees herself represented in AI system, it's very much within the constraints of her like immediate work. And so that is something that I like think a lot about. Like, what if we lived in a society where it's much more equal and much more, where things are much more better. We basically,
No,
if we don't live in a capitalist
yeah,
society, how would that impact the technologies that we develop?
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
how would that make these problems go away, or like make these problems more nuanced, right? And but that binariness of AI is something that I think we should all think about and really like struggle against the tendency to go towards like completeness or a way of completing things, like coming to premature conclusions about anything.
No, I actually agree and think about it all the time. Because hierarchy dictates power not just over physical resources, economic resources, it also dictates power over knowledge, power over. And we live in a place where enormous homogenization is happening right now, especially with social media. Uh, and there is, so I think, Ram Dayal Munda is a figure in Jharkhand who spoke about this enormously. He said that we are all looking for, he used the word bhagidari, we are all looking for participation. Whose development is it? And in that, he said the economic aspect of people not being locals not participating in development is one aspect. But what about the erosion of the larger homogeneous, all of that? So I do think, I really keep thinking about that myself. And we should, like, that's what cinema really does that for you also. Like, it makes you slightly empathetic to a culture which you are not exposed to. This Singapore president or prime minister, Lee Kuan Yew, what was his name? Yeah, Lee Kuan Yew. Yeah. He did this one experiment, even though he was a conservative, but he did this experiment of having different people stay in the same building compulsorily, housing compulsorily. So that and a lot of their ethnic problems were solved because of that kind of issue. Because your neighbors with a Muslim, your neighbors with a different, you're seeing it automatically sees that it's not. There's no difference really. It's just a difference of way of living. So what? Yeah.
What is producing in a film like this? What does producing involve? What's your because you do say that there is CSR money, you guys are also putting in your money. What is your role, and
So, so our role, I think, mainly was also, apart from getting the funding in place, was also to work with Aranya a lot on the entire stage from the development of the script to, because it came to us as an idea, right? Like, and then he developed it from there with the research and everything. So it was kind of going from there and getting into the development of the script, then the story and the final edit, and just like creatively. I think personally also my involvement was more along the creative. I would say the creative producing part of it. Yeah, because the funding and all was already sort of taken care of. Because it's a little bit of a different system in this sense, right? So yeah, in that.
I think the porcupine idea, I'd written an idea where she follows the porcupine. There was no way of there's no way of really achieving that. So we did a mix of two ideas. One was that she sees the porcupine, it comes closer to the kid, and then it rushes away. In that rushing away, the quills, it releases its quills and it shows the way. So the porcupine showing the the quills showing the path actually came from her as an idea. Because we were really jostling with availability of a porcupine. How do you shoot it? Where do you go? What do you do? She said, can we, to ease it out, can we have that trail? And even though we didn't do the exact idea, we did like an amalgamation of the two ideas. But that trail thing, and it comes from her memory, right? It comes from something that you saw early on.
No, like, because when I was growing up, we would walk around. It was an area we'd go on a lot of treks and stuff like that. So I would actually find these porcupine. We'd collect them and things like that when we were younger. So it just reminded me of that. So that's why I was, because initially it was a lot of trouble to find a porcupine and shoot one, and it also had to match the landscape that of the place that he was setting the film in, right? So yeah.
And how many people in the crew? How big was it? How small was it?
At its peak, we had 50 crew, and then
50 or 50?
50.
Okay.
Then we didn't have money in the second schedule. It was 15 people.
Okay.
And then it was me and my DOP.
Okay.
So indie films are made like that only. But it should not be. I don't romanticize this notion of making small budget indie films. It takes a toll on everybody involved. And you've seen Suleimani Kida, that film of Amit Masurkar. It was made in 12 lakh rupees. He says the same thing. You have to use so much of your social capital, so much people end up working for lesser money, etc. So that's why, like, they had intended a short film. The fact that it became a feature, I had to put in money from my side. All of that it worked out well. I mean, things are great, but what if that hadn't worked out? But with cinema, you need to kind of take a little bit of a flight of risk in that sense.
You were speaking the other day about, what all has happened after the film. Can you maybe talk about the journey after the film? Like, how do you distribute this? How do you reach it to people? I mean, it's great that we're all watching this, but it's still, 40 people at the end of the day. What do you see as the future for the...
See, one thing that after MAMI, I realized that people are making the film their own. There is a strong word of mouth. So we need to use that, because we don't have an actor who's a star. We don't have a director who's well known, first time filmmaker. So what do you leverage on? You leverage on word of mouth. And the word of mouth became so immense that people would post. After each screening, I would see 50, 60, 100 small write-ups that people are putting up on Letterboxd, on their Instagram, etc. So the idea became to leverage that. How do you leverage that? There are in a spell between festivals, there are dry spells where buzz can quickly dry, buzz can quickly go away. So with us, what was important was to keep our screenings going on. So after MAMI, we did National Film Archive of India, IIM Calcutta, JNU we did recently. Soho House in Bombay, Whistling Woods. A lot of these places where we could screen the film for not a lot of money, because the systems are already there. You can just approach them and do it. But what this did was it had a lot of journalists who came for these screenings, and they wrote immensely about it, and that became like a thing for the film to keep going till a Bangalore happens and the film wins, for example. And so now this is one part. The other part is a limited release and an OTT release that we are working on right now. We are speaking to a couple of people. For example, Kiran Rao had come for our screening. She really liked the film, so she has made a couple of suggestions herself, which we are toying with. And she's a wonderful artist herself, like very genuinely invested in films. And so she was wholeheartedly, she put me in touch with somebody who works in the Hong Kong film market, for example, things like that. You know?
Yeah, and just to add to that, it's because this film is also, it was intended from a place to broaden the awareness and the conversation on such topics like digital society in India. And of course, the thematic of this film, in a way you could say, is this AI bias, right? So in that sense, we also want to take it to place. So actually these 40, when we look at it from that perspective, these 40 people screenings also really matter, because it's also, that's how, it's a sort of, it's sort of like, where exactly are you screening it? And like thinking about who is watching it. So eventually we also want to take it like to the Tribal Institute in Jharkhand, and also 2 data labelers involve them. So it's like it's a one after the other process. So once this festival thing is all over, then it's like, unfortunately you do have to follow a certain system also, because of the way this whole festival is structured. But I think that's also an important thing.
But if anybody can help with distribution, we're up for it. No, but see, in seriousness, just please write about it, because that's what's keeping the film on, and make it your own. I mean, I don't have to say it. If you liked it, you will make it your own. But yeah, tell 5 friends, please.
So yeah, thank you everyone.
Thank you.